Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Debrief on ABC News Live. I'm Kimberly Brooks. Thanks so much for joining us. Our team is on the ground for the 4th Democratic debate in Westerville, Ohio, and we have a preview. Plus, the Royals are overseas in Pakistan. But first, we start with an ABC News exclusive, sit-down with Hunter Biden. He's the son of former Vice President Joe Biden and 2020 hopeful. So Hunter has become a key figure in the House impeachment inquiry against President Trump, asking the Ukrainian president to investigate Hunter Biden and his father. It's safe to say Hunter Biden never expected to be in this position. Our Amy Robach sat down with Hunter at his home in Los Angeles, where no questions were off limits, including ones about his foreign business dealings that have been the target of attacks by President Trump. So let's take a listen.
Biden and his son are stone cold crooked.
The president has been on the rampage, accusing 49-year-old Biden of improperly profiting on business interests in Ukraine while his father was vice president and the point person on Ukraine, taking a seat on the board at $50,000 a month with a gas company called Burisma, which had been accused of corruption, leading to that now infamous phone call in July, when President Trump asked Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky to investigate the Bidens. No evidence of illegal wrongdoing has been found against either one.
I want to get to the heart of it. Did you and your father ever discuss Ukraine?
No. As I said, the only time was after a news account, and it wasn't a discussion in any way. There's no but to this. No, we never did.
Your dad said, I hope you know what you're doing.
I hope you know what you're doing.
I do?
And I said, I do. And that was literally the end of our discussion.
Why?
Because my dad was vice president of the United States. There's literally nothing as a young man or as a full-grown adult that my father, in some way, hasn't had influence over. It does not serve either one of us.
When he said, I hope you know what you're doing, what did he think you were doing?
Well, he read the press reports that I joined the board of Burisma, which was a Ukrainian natural gas company. And there's been a lot of misinformation about me, not about my dad. Nobody buys that, but it buys this idea that I was unqualified to be on the board.
What were your qualifications to be on the board of Burisma?
Well, I was vice chairman of the board of Amtrak for 5 years. I was the chairman of the board of the UN World Food Program. I was a lawyer for Boies Schiller Flexner, one of the most prestigious law firms in the world.
You didn't have any extensive knowledge about natural gas or Ukraine itself, though?
No, but I think that I had as much knowledge as anybody else that was on the board. If not more.
In the list that you gave me of the reasons why you're on that board, you did not list the fact that you were the son of the vice president.
Of course, yeah, no.
What role do you think that played?
I think that it is impossible for me to be on any of the boards that I just mentioned without saying that I'm the son of the vice president of the United States.
You were paid $50,000 a month for your position?
Look, I'm a private citizen. One thing that I don't have to do is sit here and open my kimono as it relates to how much money I make or did or didn't. But it's all been reported.
If your last name wasn't Biden, do you think you would have been asked to be on the board of Burisma?
I don't know. I don't know. Probably not. I don't think that there's a lot of things that would have happened in my life that if my last name wasn't Biden.
Why did you leave the board in April?
It's a 5-year term.
And you chose not to
I chose
continue.
not to. Yeah.
Why?
I think it's pretty obvious why.
This is your opportunity to say why.
Well, because this is what becomes a distraction, because I have to sit here and answer these questions. And so that's why I've committed that I won't serve on any boards or I won't work directly for any foreign entities when my dad becomes president.
Do you think that should be a rule across the board for any administration?
No, look, that's the rule that I'm going to adhere to.
Do you regret being on the board to begin with?
No, I don't regret being on the board. What I regret is not taking into account that there would be a Rudy Giuliani and a president of the United States that would be listening to this ridiculous conspiracy idea, which has again been completely debunked by everyone. And you know,
I think
we
people
are
at home
are
are thinking, how could that not have crossed your mind, or you wouldn't have felt just a little bit in your gut, like maybe this isn't a good idea to go and sit on the board of this Ukrainian company.
I said to you, in retrospect, I wish
Right,
that
but
my
at the
judgment.
time, you never thought this might not look right.
You know what? I'm a human. And you know what? Did I make a mistake? Well, maybe in the grand scheme of things, yeah. But did I make a mistake based upon some unethical lapse? Absolutely not.
China should start an investigation into the Bidens.
Also on Trump's list of accusations against Hunter Biden, that Hunter flew on Air Force Two with his father during an official government trip to China in 2013, leveraging that connection for financial gain in an investment deal with Chinese businessman Jonathan Lee.
The president has repeatedly said that you received $1.5 billion from China despite no experience and for no apparent reason. Obviously, fact checkers have said that that is not true.
Look, this is literally has no basis in fact in any way.
Have you received any money from
No.
that business dealing?
No.
At all? Not
No,
1 cent?
Not 1 cent.
Definitely not 1.5 billion.
It's crazy. They feel like they have the license to go out and say whatever they want. It feels to me like living in some kind of Alice in Wonderland, where you're up on the real world and then you fall down the rabbit hole and, you know, the president's the Cheshire Cat asking you questions about crazy things that don't bear any resemblance to the reality of anything that has to do with me. And so here's the answer. No one ever paid me $1.5 billion. And if they had, I would not be doing this interview right now.
We saw you
Yep.
in those photos getting off of Air Force Two with your daughter, with your father.
I
You were
have traveled
there.
everywhere with my dad. And I went there because my daughter was on the trip too.
But did you talk about China
No.
or your deal with China?
No.
A 12-hour flight over?
No, of course not.
That never came up?
No.
Your father did shake hands with Mr. Lee, though, correct, in the lobby of that hotel?
I don't remember, but probably. Yeah, I hope so. I hope he did. He was my friend.
Jonathan Lee.
Yeah, for almost 13 years.
He was your
He's my
friend and your
partner.
business
Yeah,
partner.
but I understand. So really, Amy, whether I'm in New York or whether I'm in Washington, D.C., a friend and a business associate is in the hotel, and my dad's sitting there. Is it inappropriate for me to have coffee with them? I don't
So that
find
meeting
anything
was
wrong.
not a mistake. It was not unethical.
100% not. No.
All right, so you can see the rest of that interview on World News Tonight. And the impeachment investigations continue, so we're going to move to Washington, where that testimony by former top Russia advisor Fiona Hill has put spotlight on President Trump's personal attorney, Rudy Giuliani. And in that testimony, Fiona saying that former national security advisor John Bolton referred to Rudy Giuliani as a hand grenade who's going to blow everybody up. So I want to bring in Catherine Falders in our D.C. bureau to discuss this. Catherine, you know, Fiona in this testimony also, she described this tense altercation between John Bolton and Gordon Sondland. So what was that about?
Right, and that quote that you read right there in which she called the president's personal attorney a, quote, hand grenade who's going to blow everything up. Of course, those were comments reported by the New York Times from her closed-door deposition yesterday. We're learning that she revealed some new information about Rudy Giuliani, the president's personal attorney's dealings with Ukraine. You know that she wasn't there during that July 25th phone call that kicked off this impeachment inquiry. But I will say that Giuliani is responding to John Bolton in a statement to ABC News. He says he's disappointed in John. He says, "I'm not sure he realized I received all this evidence as part of my representation of the president. It was all part of the evidence and suppression of evidence involving Ukrainian collusion in the origin of some of the false information against the president," Kimberly.
Yeah, and so we know that two of his associates were arrested last week on campaign finance charges, and now the Wall Street Journal is reporting that Giuliani is going to be investigated as well.
Yeah, so the Journal is reporting that his finances, that Giuliani's finances specifically, are under investigation. We reported last week that Giuliani's relationship with those two business associates who were arrested last week is under investigation, of course, by the Southern District of New York, the same district in which Giuliani ran. But Giuliani is telling us repeatedly that he's received no indication that he's under investigation, which isn't necessarily rare. It's if you are under investigation, it's probably unlikely that they would tell Giuliani at this point. You remember when the two were arrested, his two associates were arrested last week. They didn't have any knowledge, according to our sources, that they would be arrested at that time. And usually people aren't notified that they're targets of these investigations until later.
Yeah, so before we go, I just want like a quick rundown of who else is going to be testifying this week. I know Michael McKinley, maybe Gordon Sondland as well. Just give us the rundown here.
Yeah, so we'll have the advisor to Pompeo here this week. We'll have Gordon Sondland later this week on Thursday. He's going to be an interesting witness. All eyes are going to be on him because, as we've been discussing, Republicans thought he was going to be an exculpatory witness for the president. Now there's some reporting coming out that that may not be the case. Specifically, you see him right there, specifically as it relates to the discussion of a quid pro quo and the conversations he had with the president. That will be something to watch later this week. And as we reported exclusively yesterday, members of the Office of Management and Budget have been requested for depositions here next week. This is Democrats and congressional investigators really zeroing in on that Ukraine military aid in exchange for political dirt on Joe Biden. They've been requested next week, and Kimberly, our sources are telling us that the White House is likely to block those appearances.
All right, Catherine Falder is right there in D.C. Thank you so much for the updates. And guys, we're going to move to that deeply tragic story out of Fort Worth, Texas. One of those stories that's very difficult to wrap your head around. It was supposed to be a wellness check, but when police officer Aaron Dean arrived, he fatally shot 28-year-old Tatiana Jefferson inside her home while she was playing video games with her 8-year-old nephew, Zion. And Zion saw everything. So yesterday, this police officer, Aaron Dean, resigned before he was fired and has now been arrested on murder charges. Tatiana's family speaking out yesterday, so take a look.
The fact that she got shot for looking through her own window is the problem here.
She was a law-abiding citizen. She did what she was supposed to do. For you to still do that and your life is not safe, that's scary.
All right, so I want to bring in civil rights attorney Lee Merritt, who is representing the family. Lee, it's good to see you again. It's crazy, though, because this is just 2 weeks after the Amber Geiger trial, which you were involved in. And then I talked to you recently about the murder of Joshua Brown. And now we're talking about Tatiana. I just don't know how you move through these cases. How does the previous 2 cases inform how you're working with this one?
Well, we know how the early onset of the investigation for the murder of Botham Jean played out at trial. We saw police officers with their hands on the scale, trying to tilt justice in favor of their fellow law enforcement officer. And so now we are demanding that the city of Fort Worth take steps to ensure a fair and impartial investigation. Botham Jean wasn't given that. And people fought hard so that Amber Geiger would walk. Luckily, we had a jury that was reflective of the Dallas County community that was able to hold her to some accountability, although the family and the community certainly wasn't satisfied with the 10-year sentence. All of that informs what we're doing today. And you're right, we're here just far too often. As I sit here and think about how tragic this set of circumstances is, it's hard to even compare at this point. Is it more tragic than eating a bowl of ice cream at your home? Or if you're a 15-year-old Jordan Edwards leaving a high school house party? These stories remain tragic, and we need to change the culture.
Absolutely, and it feels crazy to ask how is the family doing, but I'm going to ask you. I don't know how they actually process this level of pain and move forward, but how are they?
You know what? In the proximity of this case to other high-profile cases involving really tragic circumstances is starting to help me understand how resilient these families are. I find them ready, this family in particular, ready to fight and advocate on behalf of their sister before they've had a chance to grieve and mourn. But for these families, justice goes ahead of their ability to recover. They don't get a chance to recover and mourn. The John family didn't even start to recover and mourn until after the guilty verdict. And so this family is prepared to fight and push the city of Fort Worth to hold not only this one police officer accountable, but to bring accountability to the department that sent a SWAT team to respond to a wellness call, bring accountability to a department that has seven fatal shootings involving police officers in the last 6 months. That is a clip that is unsustainable, and it requires systemic change.
Yeah, you had called the Fort Worth Police Department one of the deadliest departments in the U.S. What do you think now, and what does the family think now of the resignation and now the charges of murder?
Well, the resignation itself was a slap in the face to this family. Why a police officer or any person, if you stop treating these police officers as special individuals, any person can prowl around someone's property and shoot them through the back window of their home, and not on video, and not be arrested that night, not be fired at least by the city officials that night or the next day, to be given an opportunity to resign is simply a slap in the face. It was a brief reprieve that he was arrested and charged with murder, but he's out on bond already. And the Tarrant County District Attorney's Office is now at bat to ensure that those charges move forward in front of the grand jury, and that this officer is vigorously prosecuted. And quite frankly, this family doesn't have much faith in the Tarrant County District Attorney's Office, who has a checkered past of her own.
All right, Lee Merritt, I hate to always see you under these circumstances, but I appreciate you joining us today. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yes. And guys, as you know, a whole lot has happened since the last debate ABC News hosted in Houston. But tonight, it all goes down again. The fourth debate is going to be hosted by CNN and the New York Times, with 12 Democratic presidential candidates taking the stage at Otterbein University in Westerville, Ohio. And our Rachel Scott is already on the ground there in the spin room. Rachel, good to see you. I feel like the conversation is going to be very different tonight with these impeachment proceedings hanging in the balance.
Yeah, good to see you as well, Kimberly. Yes, I mean, the impeachment proceedings have dominated the conversation in Washington. And the big question tonight is, will it dominate the conversation on that debate stage? We know that this is the first debate since that impeachment inquiry was launched. We also know that every single candidate, all 12 of the candidates on the stage tonight, do support the impeachment inquiry. And another wild card will be, will Joe Biden have to be on the defense tonight? Joe Biden will tell you himself, he said it over the weekend in Iowa, that he believes he is the reason why this impeachment inquiry was launched in the first place. We know at the center of it was the president's call with the Ukrainian president, in which he repeatedly urged him to investigate corruption, and Joe Biden and his son, who had business dealings abroad while his father served as vice president. And so the question tonight, and the big wild card, right, is whether or not his Democratic rivals attack him on that, and whether or not it was appropriate for his son to have those dealings. I caught up with Joe Biden over the weekend. I asked him why his son is just now deciding to step down from the board of a Chinese-backed company. He again denied any wrongdoing and said if he is elected as president, no one in his family will work with a foreign entity or even have an office in the White House. Kimberly?
Yeah, that's definitely, I can definitely see that being a part of the conversation. Something else that's a little bit of a change, it was 10 last time and 2 more people this time on that stage, Tom Steyer and Tulsi Gabbard making her way back. How do you think that's going to impact things?
Yeah, that's right. This is a presidential primary history here. This is the largest that we've seen on a debate stage. 12 people on one stage. And the challenge for these candidates is how does your message break through? Especially if you're a candidate that's struggling in the polls, how does your message break through with that many candidates on one stage? I asked Senator Kamala Harris about that in Iowa this weekend, and she said that will certainly be hard tonight. It's hard to discuss serious issues, she says, when you only have a minute and 15 seconds to answer. And so that will be the task of the candidates on the stage tonight, especially those that are not doing so well in the polls. They will have to convince voters that their vision for America is better than some of the leading frontrunners in this race, Kimberly.
All right, Rachel Scott already there in the spin room. Thank you for the preview. And guys, our ABC News Live team has been in Ohio ahead of tonight's debate, talking to people there. So I want to go to Devin Dwyer, anchor of the briefing room, with more. Hey, Devin.
Hey, Kimberly. Yeah, we're in Pataskala, Ohio, up here ahead of the big debate later tonight. A lot of excitement in this corner of this very important political state. This is the first time tonight, as you know, there will ever be 12 candidates on the same debate stage at the same time in a presidential debate. It's never happened before. So a lot of excitement about seeing that bigger crowd. Tom Steyer, the billionaire, making his debut. Of course, Tulsi Gabbard, who failed to make the ABC News debate down in Houston, will be on stage tonight. A lot of controversy around her, of course, so people will be watching her. And then those front runners going to be in the spotlight tonight. tonight, Joe Biden, Elizabeth Warren. A lot of excitement there. We talked to voters around the state over the past 24 hours. We did a little bit of a road trip to talk to voters about how they feel about this sprawling Democratic presidential field, also how they feel about impeachment. You might be surprised to hear some of the things we heard in this state. A lot of differing opinions on impeachment, a very clear division, also some frustration with the facts in this whole scandal. People don't really seem to have their arms around that. They want to know more. We'll bring you some of those voices in our road trip through much of Ohio, including the stop here at this pumpkin patch in Pataskala, Kimberly. So tune in today, 3:30 Eastern Time in the briefing room for more on that. Kimberly?
Absolutely, Devin. Love to see you festive. And guys, our coverage of the debate tonight begins at 7 p.m. You can catch everything on ABC News Live. All right, so we move overseas to Syria, and it's been a full week of the Turkish attacks on the Syrian Kurds now. And now President Trump issuing an executive order authorizing sanctions against the government of Turkey for destabilizing the region. A reminder, President Trump withdrew U.S. troops from northern Syria and gave the green light for Turkey to attack the Kurds, who have long been allies with the U.S. in the fight against ISIS. So I want to bring in Ian Pannell, who's on the ground in Duhok, Iraq, with the latest. Ian, I just want to first ask you, what does it mean to place sanctions on the same country that you gave the green light to?
Well, I think many people think what it means is inconsistency, and that might be a kind way of framing it. In practice, what it means is so they're going to target current and former government officials who are part of the attempt to push down into northern Syria. That's one thing. They're going to cancel negotiations over a $100 billion trade deal, and also steel tariffs apparently are going to go back up to 50%. So the government and the economy of Turkey has undoubtedly been suffering. The value of the Turkish currency, the lira, has been going down ever since President Erdogan launched this incursion into northern Syria, and so that will be damaging, but I think many people will regard it pretty much as fiddling while Rome burns.
Yeah, and Ian, do people think that these sanctions will even be effective?
Yeah, I think that's the key question. Will it change President Erdogan's mind? Will it have an impact for the citizens of northern Syria? It's hard to see that it will. I mean, of course, we don't know. It's possible that it could. But we've seen sanctions imposed on other governments, and the value, the impact of sanctions, look at Iran, look at North Korea, I think is highly debatable. Certainly with President Erdogan of Turkey, it's a big country, it's a powerful country, and it's a relatively wealthy country. I think it can probably sustain this level of sanctions. I don't think it's going to change policy. It hasn't in other areas, certainly didn't with Russia and Russian officials in its policies in Crimea and Ukraine, etc. So I don't think it's going to make a huge difference. I think President Erdogan's determined to press ahead, but he is under enormous amounts of pressure. I don't think it's the sanctions that's doing it, but there is a lot of political and military pressure on him right now. Russia is playing an increased role in northern Syria. It is also talking to the Turkish government. Is it possible that he puts a halt to his incursion? There's no sign at the moment, but all the indications are leading towards perhaps that could happen.
And Ian, quickly before we go, you had brought to our attention the role that the female Kurdish fighters are playing in all of this. So I just want you to briefly explain that to us.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, look, the role of women in Kurdish society is the kind of equality that many other countries kind of aspire to. You know, women and men are treated equally. There was a female Kurdish fighter who we met in the battle for Raqqa against ISIS. This was just over 2 years ago now. We just met her family again, her brother, also part of that battle. And we sat down and did an interview with him. One of the key things that he said was the level of betrayal he feels at America, that his sister had died while fighting alongside the United States, and now he, his family, his community were being put under the cosh of Turkish aggression as he saw it, and he would never trust America's word for it ever again.
All right, Ian Pannell right there on the ground in the Middle East. Thank you so much for the updates. All right, guys, and we move on to a very important conversation for couples who are pregnant or who are trying to get pregnant. Today, October 15th, is Pregnancy and Infant Loss Awareness Day. It's a day of remembrance for all families whose lives are changed forever by the death of their children during pregnancy, at birth, or in their infancy. And we're going to dive into some new research regarding fertility rates. So I'm joined by Dr. Soumya Bhutani from ABC's medical unit. Thanks for being here. first, I just want to ask you about pregnancy and infancy loss. What does that encompass?
Sure.
Yes.
So, when we think of pregnancy loss, we're typically thinking of miscarriage, which is a loss of pregnancy that can occur in any trimester. It's incredibly common, and it's actually difficult to track because a lot of times women can experience a miscarriage even before they know that they're pregnant. And infancy loss refers to the unfortunate, death of an infant after they are born.
Yeah, and so of course we talk a lot. I mean, this has severe psychological effects on the couple.
Yeah. I think one thing that we can use this day to highlight is that having a pregnancy loss or an infant loss is like having any kind of loss in your life in terms of the grief that these couples experience, and that psychological treatment exists, whether it's in the form of individual therapy, couples therapy, bereavement groups, and that sometimes, friends and family might not know how to approach this with couples that are experiencing it, but it really is unique for each couple.
Absolutely. So I think when people think of fertility, they always think about what the woman has to do, but the research you're presenting today is showing the role that men actually play in fertility as well.
Right. So, like you said, when we think about fertility, we think about women, but it really is a two-way street. And so earlier this week, there was some new research that came out of Boston University that actually showed that men who smoke marijuana once a week or more prior to even conceiving, their female partners have a 2 times increased risk of experiencing a miscarriage.
I think that statistic, that research would be shocking to a lot of people, like a very big surprise.
Mm-hmm.
You're saying smoking marijuana increases the risk of miscarriage by 2 times.
Mm-hmm.
That's wild.
Mm-hmm.
And then there was other research about alcohol as well.
Yes.
Yeah.
So there was some other research that came out a little earlier this month that looked at men's effect of alcohol consumption on the infants once they were born, and it actually showed that men's alcohol consumption could play a role in having babies with congenital heart defects.
It's wild because you always know the women stop the drinking, but in reality, there has to be a conversation for both partners.
Right, exactly.
All right, Dr. Soumya Bhutani, I think people are going to be looking into that. Thank you for sharing that with us.
Of course, thanks for having me.
Absolutely. And guys, before we go, we're going to check in on the royals. Prince William and Kate are in Pakistan in the Himalayas, and our Maggie Rulli is right there. Maggie?
Hey, Kimberly. Yeah, Will and Kate have officially kicked off their 5-day tour here in Pakistan. And wow, they did it in style. I need to show you this photo. This is them walking out. They got the entire red carpet rolled out for them when they landed last night here in Islamabad. And one of the things that everyone's focusing on is Kate and how absolutely gorgeous she looked next to Will, but also how much it brought up these memories of Princess Diana. You can even see the side-by-side of the two of them together. They're both wearing a traditional Pakistani dress, both in similar aqua blue colors. This has a lot of people talking because it also brings up memories of how important Pakistan was for Princess Diana. This is something we've seen so much today. Diana came to Pakistan, her first solo visit in 1991. She then came back 2 more times in 96 and 97. She helped fundraise for a local hospital here. Now, that hospital actually, Will and Kate are going to be visiting on Thursday. So this theme of his mother and his mother's legacy is going to be playing out throughout the trip. It's a big week. They're here through Friday. Kimberly will be with them every step of the way.
Thank you, Maggie. Yes, you will. Maggie always living her best life. All right, guys, continue to take care of yourselves. And if you're around, you can stick around for the briefing room, as Devin said. It's at 3:30 p.m. Then check out World News Prime at 8 p.m. And if you want to stay updated on all of these headlines and the debate coverage, you can